Fox News has its own set of challenges, let's be honest. And I have nothing, too bad to say about them. Hey, I worked there for many years, but it's a very different place. And it's a very frightened place. People are very scared. And one of the reasons they're scared is because there was that lawsuit, Dominion, that they paid nearly $1 billion to settle. I mean, you're talking $787 million. I think that was the number. That's a lot of money to have to settle. As a journalist, I don't love it, right? I don't love it because if people are just doing their jobs and they're reporting the news and they're trying to sink their teeth into something, and you may not always be right, but sometimes it's just live on TV, right? And you're asking questions and trying to learn. But what was of concern in the Dominion case was that there were records of management not really buying into what the allegations were that were being spread by Giuliani and Sidney Powell, et cetera, et cetera. And so if management didn't buy it and didn't believe it and thought it was all fake, well, then why would they allow the organization to keep hammering these points home? And that's where the $787 million came in. Because you can't just knowingly go on and report something that's false. And by the way, I don't think everybody did. I mean, there's some really good folks there, Maria being one of them. And I don't think it's like she was saying, oh, gee, this is just good for ratings. But they had some evidence of other executives, et cetera, admitting that, this was something else, right? So that's what they're worried about, which may help to explain this little number. Donald Trump speaking at a rally over the weekend. And watch how quickly they cut away, and they also clarify some of the things that he was saying. Here we go.
You had no trouble with North Korea, did you? No trouble whatsoever. Started a little bit rough, right? Rocket Man, little Rocket Man. He said, we've got a red button on my desk, he said. I said, I have a red button also, but mine's bigger, better, and it works. Mine works. And then, no.
Well, the former president finally got around to some campaign promises amid lots of cheering, as you heard. Many untruths. The 2020 election was not rigged. It was not stolen. But still, Trump is way ahead in the polls. And now to the man desperately trying to catch him. Let's listen to Governor Ron DeSantis.
I have 90 minutes on national television to articulate conservative principles, to show how freedom works.
Okay. It's like, let's go to the man that's desperately trying to catch. Let's go to the man that the GOP establishment desperately wants to win, who basically has no shot in HELL. Anyway, it's just interesting to see how there was that qualifier. What likely happened, and having been on that anchor desk myself, I'm imagining that someone freaked out. Someone said, oh my gosh, he said that about the election. So she was immediately told in here, you got to dump out of this. You got to get out of this. So he's talking about Little Rocket Man, and she comes out and says, okay, blah, 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 blah. And that was, I am pretty darn sure that was a scripted, here's what you got to say, which she said. And she has to say it because Smartmatic is now suing for $2.7 billion. Smartmatic filed that suit back in 2021, alleging that Fox basically participated in, or rather alleging that Fox took down the company, Smartmatic that is, because they were perpetuating this idea that somehow Smartmatic was working alongside Biden, et cetera, et cetera. And in doing so was knowingly harming the company. And so they want $2.7 billion. Fox is like, no, that's way too much money, but maybe it's not, considering the other one was $787 million. Just saying. Apparently they got money to get their insurance company. Must love them, right? So Fox is in a bit of a pickle, and it's been in a bit of a challenge situation because frankly, it doesn't have the right management there, which is something that shareholders are pointing out. So there's multiple shareholder lawsuits. And they actually are citing the lack of management, or rather they're saying that management abdicated its responsibilities, its fiduciary responsibilities to shareholders by allowing this kind of chaos. So they have a point. I mean, if you've got management that can't manage and you have a lawyer who's making millions of bucks, guy who wrote the Patriot Act stuff for Bush, he was there at the time. He's no longer. He got like a big golden parachute out the door. But if he's controlling this, so to speak, and yet all this stuff, if your head of legal is not really head of legal, like he's saying one thing, you got management saying another, you get some anchors saying something, and yet you're still putting stuff on the air that's very, very damaging to a company, well, then you're going to run into challenges. By the way, you know what? Like, again, I say this as a journalist who doesn't ever want journalists in a position where they're being hindered. But if you're knowingly doing that, then yeah. I mean, like, if a story's not true, you don't keep running with it just because it's rating. Let me be very clear on that. Very, very clear. I know we all want ratings, right? Like, we're all in business. But this is why Smartmatic or any of these companies has the ability to then go and sue for libel, because it is beyond irresponsible to do that. I mean, hey, look, if you got a good story and it rates, like, that's best case scenario, of course. But you don't just do a story because it rates. And if they're able to prove that, as clearly they were scared of something there with Dominion, then that could actually be a real problem for Fox. I mean, it's going to be a problem for insurance companies in the future. Who the heck's going to insure them? It's going to be a problem, I think, even for board members. I wonder, like, what their kind of liability is here. Paul Ryan, right? I'm talking about you. So the board members there. And then, of course, the shareholder lawsuits will come forward and go after the board. And that'll be interesting to see. So the future very much up in the air, which I feel bad about, because, you know, there's still a lot of really good people there and they need the jobs and they earn their living there. And I wish them all well. But it's sad to see how quickly an organization can deteriorate almost overnight.